Welcome everyone. Welcome to the first Kipuwex conference. It's a pleasure to have you all here. And I will ask you, if you're watching live, to let us know where you're watching from, and so that we can have an idea of the audience. So first of all, my name is Mirai Tulekima. I am tuning in from Perth, Australia. I'm an award-winning global entrepreneur, but I'm an engineer first, and a STEM and energy expert. And I also do talk shows on, a podcast called the Greatness Engineering Hour Show. And the Kipuwex conference is jointly organized with Kipuwex, obviously, in Finland. If you are not familiar with the company, and with Mirai Tulekima Global Leadership Organization, we're hosting the conference today. So we bring you today the best expert in the digital, healthcare, and we're going to talk about the technology that Kipuwex, has developed. And we know that Kipuwex really want to use the technology to help healthcare worldwide, but also to create, I think, a revolution, if that's, and that's the way I would put it, create a revolution in the healthcare, sector. So just to give you an idea of how this conference is gonna, the agenda of the conference, we're gonna have 4 keynote speakers today. And so you will have the opportunity to ask them questions after they've presented, and we hope that you will learn from them, and that you'll be inspired and be curious to continue the conversation with them outside the conference. Just to give you an idea of who we have as speakers today, our first speaker will be Professor Dr. Nicholas Adra. He is the chairman of advisory committee and the chairman of Kipuwex board. And I will give him the opportunity to introduce himself before he presents. But just to give you a little bit on his background, he's the CEO and founder of Adra Industries. He is also the CEO and founder of Synthesis Group, High Health Solution, and High Power Group. He has, the last 30 years combined the roles of serial entrepreneur, investor, and also working in the academic in the global technical space. So that's going to be our first speaker. Then we're going to have Mr. Marco Onala, and he is the founder and CEO of Kipuwex. So again, a good opportunity to learn from the technology that's been developed and from the man that actually started it all. So Marco is a serial entrepreneur from Finland, and he has a global experience in multiple technology front, including most recently in IoT standing for Internet of Things, and IoMT, Internet of Medical Things. And also, he also has experience in AI, remote patient monitoring, and that's what we're going to talk about today, and overall telehealth, industry. So, get ready to learn from Marco. I think he has some revolutionary and very, very inspiring things to share today. And we have, after Marco, Professor Laszlo, and he is a professor and medical doctor and a pathologist at the Karolinska Institute Hospital in Sweden. So he's based in Sweden, and he is the recipient of numerous awards. And he has worked in China. He has worked, in different capacity as an expert in cancer research, cancer biology, infectious immunology, clinical pathology, virology, digital imaging, and advancing microscopy. So he has published several articles, and you get the opportunity to learn from him as well today. And finally, we have Dr. Yassine Jat. He's a global head of digital health solution and chief medical officer. And he is based, he is based in Paris, in France. Bon après-midi, Mr. Dr. Yassine. And he holds a medical degree with a specialization in pain management. So he will be presenting on pain management today. And the whole event will be moderated by Tita. Tita Kusma is the chief marketing officer of Kipuwex, and she'll have the opportunity to let us know a little bit more about Kipuwex, the vision, the mission, and the key goals, of the organization. And so that's what we have for you today. And after all the presentation, you will have the opportunity to ask question, and I request that you put the question in the comments so that we can read them and ask the question to our keynote expert today. So that's, as you see, the program is is going to be very insightful, and I know that you're gonna learn a lot from all our experts today. So over to you, Tita, to let us know what is Kipuwex and the key thing that Kipuwex is doing, and particularly have an idea of the mission and the vision of Kipuwex. Over to you, Tita.
Thank you, dear Mirele. It's always a privilege to be at your show. I'm honored to represent Kipuwex as a CMO, spreading awareness of one of the top innovations in the world in the field of healthcare. Inventing something like Kipuwex, it's hard. It requires tremendous work and exceptional skills and wisdom behind it. To attend all medical device regulations and to spread awareness of it. Thankfully, we have outstanding team and International Advisory Committee helping our CEO and founder, Mr. Marko Höynälä, and his life mission. Kipuwex mission is to combat healthcare inequality and help millions of people. Kipuwex vision is to become a world-leading company in pain management domain, which is one of a kind. The greatest wealth is health, where health is a vehicle, not a destination. In taking care of health, it's also an indicator of national productivity and health security. Yet it has been one of the biggest challenges, especially during recent time with COVID and dire need for innovating telehealth, digitalization, IE and IoMT space. Thankfully, Kipuwex had predicted this future years ago, well before the pandemic hit, when our visionary founder Marko Höynälä started this journey in humble beginnings in Finland, and today that is becoming a global phenomenon. I'm excited and honored to present today the journey of Kipuwex and what it means each of us and our fellow humanity in moving towards a new future. One where your health monitoring becomes a joint journey at your fingertips and where you can make empowered and informed decisions on a daily basis.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tita, for giving us, an idea of what Kipuwex, the revolutionary work that Kipuwex is doing. And now we're gonna hear from the expert, working on those technology and also, putting all the knowledge into this the technology that Kipuwex is creating. And I'm gonna call Professor Adra, chairman of Kipuwex, to start his address and his speech today as part of the conference.
sorry for being on a train set, seeing you all. And I do have a hope for the Swedish technology that allows us to have a reasonable connectivity. But you can hear me now, I hope. Does it work well? Okay, good, perfect. So my background is that I've spent the last 30 years, starting to get old, obviously, to try to work with global healthcare challenges in different capacities. And I'm really proud and excited to be part of the Kipuwex journey that have the power, I think, to contribute in a very interesting way to the global healthcare landscape. I mean, the landscape as we see it, of course, face numerous challenges. So those are the ones I would like to spend some time on here today together with you, and then also a little bit, present my thoughts on how you could say digital solutions like Kipuwex can really play a role in addressing those long-term challenges that the system face. So whoever managed the presentation, please, move to the first slide here.
Okay, all right, we're here.
Yeah, but
can you see?
Can you move to the first slide or how? Okay.
So is it? Can you see it? Is of challenge to overcome? Is it the?
Yeah, but I don't see it on my slide. I mean, maybe on my screen. Maybe that's the. Do I have a different screen?
Okay, all right. Excuse. Sorry for that. Could you see the presentation, or is it? It's gone now? I stopped sharing, so
we don't see that at the moment, but it was visible previously. So if you can put it back.
Happy faces.
Okay, all right. Sorry. Okay, should be all right now.
And for the ones that haven't tried the Swedish train, you will get some of those sounds from what typical Swedish train background as well. So that's good.
Okay, we should have it now. So it's gonna be about the challenge of.
Yeah, the first of the two slides. Yes.
Okay, it should be okay. All right, we have it now. Is it visible now?
It is visible, but probably you can go to the next slide.
Perfect.
Next slide. Okay.
Next slide.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So now we see that one. Thanks. Perfect. So I would just like to talk a little bit about the challenges we face today, and in the Western world, as we all know, a lot of our GDP is actually allocated to healthcare solutions. I would say, in one way, the worst case is the US situation, which I think has been some sort of a you could say, a role model for many economies, which of course is a bit unfortunate. Today, with the recent COVID expenses, they are approaching 20% of GDP, and as we all know, that the US economy is a $18 trillion economy, and 20% of that being spent to healthcare solutions of different kind. And as we also know that despite those massive investments, not even everyone in US have access to that healthcare. In certain parts of the country, there are large parts of the population not having access to that healthcare. And I think on top of that, when estimating the happiness or the satisfaction from the people that are being served by the US healthcare system, it's also very low. So despite these enormous investments, it doesn't seem to do what it's supposed to do. To provide, healthcare of satisfaction to the citizens. And we have versions of that across Europe. We have versions of that across the whole Western world. That the way we have tried to structure, modern healthcare since Second World War, obviously drives a lot of investments, but doesn't deliver what's expected and what's hoped for, in a sense. And in the growth markets, you have a version of that problem. They try to learn from the Western world without, really seeing the big challenges, I think, on the Western world solutions. And in most of the growth market cases, healthcare is not available for large parts of the population, and it's absolutely not affordable. And on top of that, most growth economies struggle with the trust for the healthcare system, meaning that any of the citizens that can afford it, that they will choose to search for solutions abroad. So you will then use funds that could be very important for the local ecosystem to be invested in foreign healthcare solutions instead. So that's of course a very unsustainable situation for both the Western world as well as the growth markets in a sense. On top of this, you could say 70 years of continuous failure, I would like to call it. We are facing something that we haven't faced before, a dramatically and fast aging global population. We have seen that in a couple of countries in the past, but now there's not a country on the planet not facing this dramatic challenge. And as we do know, it is the elderly that really drives healthcare costs and healthcare challenges. For example, in a typical Western country, 90% of healthcare costs are spent on humans' last year of life. And that's a dramatic number, of course, and that will further emphasize the first challenge that we see. And we have also, for good and for bad, of course, the continuous innovation of new treatments. But what happens with that is a global fast acceleration of the costs for any type of advanced treatments. We see multiples of 3, 4, 5 in critical disease areas for the cost of treatments. And adding that to the first point, of course, makes the challenge even bigger. I would also, I think the first 2 points are quite known to everybody. And I think the third point I would like to emphasize is sometimes forgotten, actually, but the global way we pay for healthcare is that the payers in different forms and shapes mostly pay for performed treatment, and rather than the treatment result. And that means, in a sense, that the innovation system is built for and incentivizing that we create chronic diseases. So I would like to argue that our financing of healthcare is the main driver of the fast growth in chronic diseases. And because that's lifetime customers. It sounds a little bit sarcastic, but that's of course how the innovation system works. If you think about that, most new therapies and treatments are being financed by global pharma. Global pharma is financed because it's so capital intensive. So it's the big institutional investors that finance that, and that is typically pension funds. No clear identified owners in a sense, just big pension funds that are seeking, of course, short-term returns, since the people that are reviewing their pension fund, they are comparing with their husband, wife, neighbor, whatever. And if somebody else gets a better return on their pension fund, they change provider. And that means that the management of pension funds is looking for of course, short-term returns. So they are forcing the capital-intensive companies like global pharma to prioritize short-term returns. And that means that when the pharma companies allocate money to a new, you could say, drug candidate, if they choose between 6 drug candidates and 3 of those drug candidates are actually treating a patient so that they will get rid of the disease, and 3 of them are creating a chronic situation. Of course, from a financial modeling perspective, the chronic situations will be prioritized. So the research and the development money will always be allocated to the chronic disease treatment situations. So I think from that quite sad perspective, I think that our present system of financing global healthcare is actually creating all the chronic diseases we're now fighting with, since the solutions that could address the diseases in a different way will not get financing in the beginning. They will not be allocated resources to those compared to the ones that treat diseases as chronic. And a fourth and also, of course, important point that connects a little bit to the third point is that there are a lot of interest and incentives for big funds that dominate the ecosystem, the investment funds. I mean, these massive investment funds, we all know about them. I mean, from the BlackRocks and downwards. We talk about funds that sits on trillions of dollars. So BlackRock now passed 10 trillions of dollars. And they, of course, have already allocated maybe 7, 8, 9% of the funds towards healthcare investments in global pharma, etc., etc. So it's very hard to break out of that system for them. The big insurance companies are massively integrated with health insurance. I mean, that's probably the biggest single driver of revenues in the insurance industry as well, which means that the whole ecosystem is also facilitating their continued growth. I mean, their market cap, their investor interest, etc., etc. And we have, unfortunately, a similar thing with the recognized providers. Because if you are recognized in the system, then you will get a better allocation of funds from the insurance companies and elsewhere, which means that the recognized providers that are ranked as very high in the present system will of course be incentivized to continue as is, which means that those super strong brands, among them where Laszlo is now sitting with his white coat, is of course benefiting from as it is. And then we have innovation centers of different kind. Allocation of research funding is absolutely not, let's call it, distributed in equal manners. I mean, there's a couple of centers on the planet that gets most of the real funding for research within healthcare. I mean, it's a big boys game as well. It's critical mass dependent. It's nothing you can build fast and easy without being part of a massive ecosystem. So those dominant players that also sets, you could say, that the agenda for the future of the healthcare system is also incentivized by having the last 70 years built their position as the engines for innovation in the present ecosystem. So there's a lot of strong forces that keeps us with an unproductive and unsustainable, very costly and not particular patient-friendly type of a system. So that's I mean, what I've been trying the last 30 years to fight with in different capacities and roles, and where I see Kipuwex as a great, I would say, initiative that enables some new developments of different kind, powered by COVID. So please, the next slides. So a more positive one, hopefully. So digital health, I mean, as a single, I would say, force, I think it's a very timely and powerful force to actually, for once, start to break and unlock this type of lock-ins, which is very unfortunate for patients across the globe and for taxpayers, by the way. So if we look into what actually drives healthcare cost and also opens up for availability, is very much, I mean, how do we approach prevention stuff? How do we approach early detection? How do we innovate the treatment regimes? And how do we work with I mean, the recovery period after some sort of a treatment? And I think by introducing the digital approach to that, we have massive opportunities for really, I mean, with the right type of solutions, like Kipuwex is one a good example of. We can, I mean, in a much better way, work on prevention using, I mean, different type of triangulation of sensor data, time series data, I mean, individual, very personalized data that can see if anything doesn't look really good. You can early on, I mean, get an early detection, and you can actually prevent things to be complicated. And this is a massive thing to introduce. And we put on it then the possibility of providing treatments in other places than the physical hospital. I mean, people should never go to a hospital if they not absolutely need to do it, in a sense. I mean, if they break a leg or need surgery, yes, maybe a hospital makes sense. But in all other cases, I would strongly, after a life in this space, recommend people to stay out of hospitals. So if we look at the technology solutions presently, today's sensors and optics technologies have never been as cheap as now. That means that, I mean, our smartphones, a mobile phone, I mean, of any average caliber, has the same you could say, sensor and optics technologies that medical advanced equipment had 10 years ago. So we can actually capture a lot of exciting stuff through available sensors and optics. And also, I mean, look at like an Kipuwex device. For a fraction of the cost of the past, we can produce something that measures so many, I mean, important data from a patient, which is really, I mean, amazing how much you can get out of a device of that size and that cost to produce. Today, also powerful algorithms. I mean, we have 3D printing available. Computing power has never been as great as now, and the coming 2 years will just explode. That allows us, of course, with unlimited opportunities to do whatever we would have liked to done for a long time. In a sense, we have talked about predictive planning and personalized medicine for I mean 30 years as well, but it has never really happened. But now it can happen, and it can happen in a cost-effective manner if we allow it to happen. If we can break those lock-in situations as depicted before. And what I really excited about is the pandemic, the power of the pandemic. So the pandemic has fast-tracked all these things that we have been fighting for such a long time. Today, I mean, I'm just quoting one reason. There are a lot of those. I'm back. Hello. Did you lose me?
Yeah, that's okay. We can still hear you.
Oh, super. So sorry if I'm repeating myself. Was a little bit of lag on the communication. So the pandemic, I mean, has as said, triggered things in an amazing way. McKinsey, I mean, claims from their recent quite massive review that the telehealth demand has multiplied 38 times during the pandemic, which is of course a fabulous number, but it has to be put in perspective coming from a quite low number from before. But it's still an amazing development in the right direction. And they also, I mean, report other big numbers. I mean, when they look at the volume of remote visits in a typical provider, they report between 50 to 175 times as many remote visits at a given time. Very low figures, but now, I mean, showing dramatic developments in the right direction. One important step in the right direction. The other figure I was struck by in the McKinsey report is that 84% of all medical doctors being part of the study are now doing some type of you could say virtual care type of engagement. So 84% of the medical doctors being engaged in some sort of a telehealth activity across the globe, which is also a fantastic, of course, number. Looking at the drivers of the Kipuwex innovations types on the planet, is an amazing allocation of funds into this direction. $57.2 billion in funding 2021, which of course is unheard of. Digital health before the pandemic, the allocation moment of time at the right place with the right platform, and we really love to engage in different type of partnerships with all of you here at this conference and all the partners we have developed across the globe to now really be part of changing the game, part of really addressing those lock-in situations that we have been facing and fighting for. Now's the connection. I will not steal more of the attention here and hand over back to you, Mirelle, again. So many thanks for the attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you for such a insightful conversation, and we can see that things are shifting. And as you mentioned, COVID has been driver to realize that we could do a lot of things online and also, manage health online. And that's a huge, huge shift that we see right now. And I know that, companies as Kipuwex are positioned to actually push, this shift forward. There is a question, and I think Tita has a question for you before we hand over to the next speaker. Tita, over to you.
Thank you, Professor and Chairman of the Kipuwex board, Niklas Adler. Yeah, I would have one question for you. How do we prepare for digitization of healthcare ecosystem?
I think that the only way to prepare is to be. I mean, there will be a lot of let's call it resistance to change. The best we can do is now to really leverage. I mean, what the pandemic has opened up. That a lot more users in the healthcare system are now open-minded to try this out, and then we have to have a very data-driven change process. I think so. So we need to collect data, helping decision makers. I mean, policy makers to really understand the power of digital health when it comes to both. I mean, the finances about it. I mean, we can really make healthcare much more affordable than ever before, especially with emphasis on prevention and early detection. But also on top of that, we can also create much more satisfactions among customers, patients, users, and I would say also that the healthcare professionals by introducing the power of digitalization into the system. So I would say that using the great power that have now been initiated globally, combine that with available technology and solutions that we now have at our mere fingertips, and using that to create data, convincing data, so that policymakers, decision makers have to facilitate the sustainable change in the right direction. It will not be easy. It will be a continuous fight, and we will need innovators like Marco that creates the Kipowexes of the world, and great people within the system as Laszlo that actually are willing to be change oriented. I think he's one out of a percentage of the guys like himself.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So next we're going to have Marco doing I think it's you're going to show something to us. So I need to share a link. So if you're watching, I'm going to share a link with you. We're going to have a demo before we can have, Professor Laszlo for his presentation. So let me just share the link to the audience, and then we're going to do the demo. So over to you, Marco, to let us know what, how it's going to work for the demo and what we need to do.
Okay, thank you very much, Mirel. We are a little bit behind, so I'm going to do this quite quickly. If you go to comments, you will see a comment from Mirel. There is a URL. So by clicking that URL, then you would be able to monitor all the key vitals from myself. So you can monitor what's the problem with me when inventing a system like Kipuwex. So must be something wrong with me. But at the same time, I will introduce what do we do with Kipuwex and what is Kipuwex. So if you haven't seen Kipuwex before, the device, I have it in my hand, and it will be put on the chest with the disposable ETC pad. So basically taking the ETC pad out and then putting the ETC pad on the device and device then on the chest. So I'm wearing the Kipuwex device now currently on the chest. And I would like to kind of simplify that Kipuwex is a remote monitoring device capturing more biomarkers than any other device or similar device at the moment on the market. So in total, we capture 11 at the moment. And then we have one additional device in the system. I have it in the finger that will capture SpO2. So at the moment, we are capturing 12 in total. And basically now all the biomarkers you can see on the tablet, but basically you should be able to see all the same now remotely with the URL that the Mirelle provided, which means that basically doctors, nurses, they could actually monitor patient remotely, and doesn't really matter where the doctors and patients are located. They would be able to monitor remotely all the key vitals. And then kind of a first phase, we will be launching Kipuwex as a remote monitoring device. But at the same time, we are working on the pain assessment. So to measure pain, it's quite complex. You will hear a presentation from Dr. Yasin shortly, that it's not easy thing. If this was easy, it would have been done already ages ago, but it's a very complex and difficult topic. And I hope Dr. Yasin will explain a little bit about that. And then after that, I will tell how in Kipuwex we are going to measure the pain. So, but as you have now the URL, you can monitor all the vitals while Dr. Yasin is going to give his presentation. So over to Yasin, or if there are any questions at this point.
I think is there any question, Tita, that we wanted to ask? Otherwise, we'll just move to Professor Laszlo for his presentation. But we have still, we have a presentation session at the end of all the the presentation. So there's gonna be, we'll leave the audience the opportunity to think about the question they want to ask, and then let us know at this point if and ask them to the presenter later on. So thank you, Marco, for the for the demo, and make sure you use the URL again when Dr. Yasin is going to present. But first we'll have Professor Laszlo to present to us now, and then we'll continue the rest of the conference. So Professor Laszlo is going to present on the interpretation of physiological measurement, and it's a Kipuwex opportunity as well. So don't go anywhere. We have an exciting presentation coming up.
Thank you very much. Now I try to share my screen. This one.
Okay.
Do you see it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and then. Okay, you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can see it.
So my background is I'm a clinical pathologist and also a life science researcher at Karolinska Institute. And I do a lot of clinical autopsies. So I'm responsible for clinical autopsies in Stockholm area. And some of the questions what we ask, why do people in general die? And how did we die? And was that death preventable? And can new technologies actually provide us some help to prolong the life a few more years, and also to make this very end process when we spend most of the healthcare cost actually more livable and more tolerable. So remote measurement of vital parameters was designed earlier for very high performance individuals. Some of the first were developed actually during the Apollo program, when people wanted to know that astronauts sent out in the space actually performing, is the person is alive and is it performing as it should. And these devices actually became world famous when it was possible for the entire planet to follow the vital parameters of those who visited the moon for the first time. And people try to interpret a lot of things just from a few very rudimentary parameters, like pulse rate, where we could say that the commander of the lunar mission actually had much more excitement than the guy who was actually flying the module after the arrival around the moon. So as Niklas pointed out, we live longer and longer. And there are a great difference between those who actually have different life quality, have different access to healthcare, have different level of life satisfaction. How long do they live? And if you look at the different parameters, one of the major reason why people die prematurely, that is social isolation. So those who do not have enough people to talk to, those who do not have a large network of family, friends, or acquaintances, those who don't have a great access to professional healthcare providers, they have definitely a shorter lifespan. And aging societies like the Japanese, where you actually now have a really a great crisis of lonely pensioners, try to introduce different tools to provide more company for aging people. But is it really the company which is missing? Or the eye of the companies, eye of the people who are surrounding you, those who actually keep a contact with you and identify signs which actually decide if you should or should not receive medical care. For my daily experience, I can say that many of the cases I can stand as a witness for cases where recognition of early signs could be life-saving. I can tell a case of an elderly lady actually who stricken by Alzheimer, has a difficulty to communicate, and found dead in her bed. And then when you examine the body, then you realize that she had a stone formation in the gallbladder, which get occluded into the gall canal, and then you will have an inflammation there, which eventually led to her death. This is something which very likely generated clear changes in her vital parameters, clear changes in her pulse, ECG, pain assessment, but she could not report it because she was stricken by Alzheimer. And in all these cases, we say that if we have a simple tool which could actually record these parameters, which coming as a warning sign, then all these cases could have a longer life expectancy. The other huge challenge for us in everyday healthcare, and not only in the healthcare, but also in nursing care or any institution which deals with people with challenge health, that we do not have enough staff. And enough staff means also that not just the number of the people, but enough qualified staff, those who are able to make proper decisions. If you look at any of the large cities' waiting rooms at hospitals, even in the most affluent societies, this is the typical scheme. So people with acute health emergencies arrive to a healthcare provider just to get stuck in waiting rooms and wait for a qualified assessment. And from our daily activity, we know that this is one of the most dangerous places in Earth. I mean, the risk to die is more dangerous than to be on a high risk sporting activity. And then we have also occasions when we very rapidly generate large number of casualties, like mass casualty events. And in all these cases, it would be an extremely important help to synchronously and systematically monitor these number of parameters, what actually the Kipuwex device can now record. And these are relatively simple parameters. These are things what an observant nurse or doctor or healthcare provider can actually relatively easily record. But it takes quite a lot of experience to put together the individual meaning of this. So what does it mean if your skin conductivity is increases or decreasing? What does it mean if your posture is changing, your skin temperature is changing, your heart rate variability is changing? And this is where AI comes into the picture. So these are the things which are relatively easy to record, but you can also convert these multiple data into an interpretation. So whom do we want to monitor? And as Kipuwex was originally developed to monitor newborns, and now we can expand it to individuals actually who in general cannot communicate. So when you need the monitoring of the individual health performance in cases when the person itself cannot tell you how do they feel. So anyone who is incapacitated, who is under sedation, under anesthesia, elderly people whom have different mental challenges, they are a national target for this type of monitoring. But also people who can communicate, but they do not have a person to communicate with. So anyone who is ending up in these overcrowded health facilities, who would need medical doctor attention, but if you have 100 patients for one doctor, then you will not get it. But it is always easier to actually get access to a computer, which can be scaled up effortlessly. If you have people living in nursing facilities, where we want to have provide their natural privacy, to have facilitated living in their own homes, that also requires that some sort of monitoring without the intrusion to their private life. In cases where you have mass casualties, when you need a very rapid decision making over rapidly changing healthcare conditions. So people who 1 minute feel good, the next minute actually crashing and will die if you don't recognize those conditions. Also, individuals who are socially isolated, and also all of them who can access, even if they can access healthcare system, but their specific condition requires a higher level, more qualified decision maker. And this is somewhere where AI actually can come in and take over a lot of problem solving and problem solving solutions. So what can we monitor? So from hospital point or from medical point, it's most important to have those vital parameters which indicate life-threatening conditions. But also it is very important to monitor discomfort, because it's not only life, but also what is the quality of life. And this will be discussed in great details. How do you actually estimate the person is suffering? And then you can also monitor rapid changes in health conditions on population level, like outbreaks. So if you can identify in a population people who actually rapidly getting fever, who start to get hypoxic, those who start to show pneumonia associated heart changes, you can also pick them up and identify them and isolate them from the rest of the population. So these things are developing all over the world, and people try to now harness the incoming large flow of data, which is now very clearly shows that even if you just pick up simple parameters, what you can have a sort of multiple talking. But if you put these parameters together, you can actually come to very detailed suggestions of changes, so the normalcy of the health condition or changes in it. And not only just suggest possible diagnosis, but also suggest action. So it can tell you how you should react to those changes, what sort of examinations you will need, what level of expertise you have to mobilize to make the decision. And these are the things what earlier required a great logistic and the presence of multiple experts in the decision-making chain, which can be now actually very much simplified and put it to the fingertip of basically the patient or the family or the first line of healthcare personnel. And these can be very simple things. These can be things, for example, a person, which one of the leading cause of death and health deterioration for elderly, falling accidents. So if a patient is not moving, if he start to show cooling off, if he start to show pain, and it is reported, it is immediately can be a warning sign, and the patient can be saved. We regularly have patients who actually simply just fall off and get cooled out and freeze to death on the bedroom floor, for example. So these are clearly preventable deaths. A person like this could have several more years of meaningful life, but we don't have any good way to prevent it, except if we have vital monitoring devices. We can also have more advanced health damages. For example, here we see a heart infarct in the posterior wall of the heart, a notoriously difficult condition to detect because the symptoms are not coming as the classical heart infarct with a retrosternal pain, but these are giving you epigastriasin, so it's a pain in your stomach area, and its ECG signs are different from the ordinary heart infarct. But if you have an indication that this patient might have, from indirect measures, might have a heart infarct, then the system can suggest you actually to specifically look for biochemical changes and extended ECG examination, which today even the most well-financed Swedish healthcare system is often misses. Because then you can identify that you have a blocked coronary artery, which is leading to this infarct, and then you have a proper treatment option, and you can give perhaps 5-10 extra years to this patient. You can also monitor changes of general heart failure. You can monitor cases when you have rapidly decreasing oxygenation. Like in this case, you see it's a massive lung edema, which is also a leading cause of that. And also, we have health conditions which we used to consider as a part of the normal elderly life, for example, difficulty to swallow. And these often go together of aspiration. So if we have decreasing reflexes, we cannot really protect our airways, the food will end up in our windpipes. And if that happens, then the food actually will start to decompose there and lead to bacterial infection, and that will be one of the leading reason of death of the elderly. Also, if you have someone who is spending too much time in a immobilized situation, so people lying in the bed without movement regularly develop so-called hypostasis in their lungs. Blood is collecting on the lower parts of the lung, and fluids are gathering there, and those areas very often get infected. So most of the elderly actually who give up life, who say that I lost my partner, I don't want to live anymore, they can actually die by will. They can just decide that I don't move anymore, and then they will develop this hypostasis atelectasia pneumonia syndrome, which can also be detected and very effectively treated by mobilization and antibiotic treatment. If it doesn't happen, then bacteria growing in the lungs will actually enter the bloodstream and eventually will lead to septic shock. And this is a condition which is actually the absolute leading death reason among many hospitalized cases. So independently, if you are a surgical patient who went through a complex operation, if you are a cancer patient, or just get a common pneumonia, you have a great risk to have circulating bacteria in your body, which eventually lead to septic shock, and then 70% of those people die. And to keep an eye, if you are gliding into a shock situation, requires constant monitoring. So it requires highly trained nurses and doctors actually to follow your vital parameters and alert you that you are now approaching the danger zone. And if this type of monitoring can be taken over by simple electronic devices and can be taken over by intelligent computer programs, it have a major impact on survival from many different healthcare insults. And this can be rather complex. So how do your different parameters are changing depending on the type of shock, for example, you're gliding in. So most often we have cardiogenic shocks, hypovolemic shock, or septic shock. And they have all their own pattern of life sign parameters. But this is something which very easy for a computer to actually analyze and give prognosis in the real time, and also even select the different type of diagnostic measures what you have to introduce, and also the different type of suggested therapeutic measures. Because without that, the body will rapidly deteriorate, and all those processes which are going into the wrong way will amplify themselves, and eventually, without intervention, it will lead to the death of the patient. And as I mentioned, also pain management is an extremely important thing, and you will hear much more about this. I just like to point out that 1 out of 10 people actually die from cancer. And one of the most terrible consequence of cancer associated that is pain, which is very difficult to manage medically. And patients who are actually now deteriorating mentally, who cannot show their pain experience, can be suffering from excruciating pain, what should not be allowed actually in a modern society. Here I can show just a case from our collection, pancreas carcinoma, an individual who actually died from pancreas carcinoma, and we see physical telltale signs of the suffering because his stomach mucosa shows hundreds of so-called stress ulcers. These stress ulcers are developing if the person is in a great distress. And all this can be prevented with proper pain medication if you recognize it. But to recognize it in a person who cannot communicate is something which requires a great deal of sensor work and intelligent data processing. And I think that for all these simple devices which can provide a large number of real-time data, which is can be now used to train up systems, eventually can lead to multiple benefits. So can lead to benefits of survival people who end up in an acute situation which require immediate medical attention, but also all of those who are living in a more isolated life or have no access to healthcare. Half of Sweden actually is living a great physical distance from healthcare facilities. And not only survival, but also life quality will hopefully improve very much if you use these devices. Thank you very much. And I will be happy to answer questions if you...
Yeah, thank you very
Well,
much, Dr. Laszlo. I think there is a question from Tita again. Great, great insight. The importance of managing the pain, and to get the sign before it gets fatal. So very, very important. And there is now a device. So Tita, your question coming in.
Yes, thank you, Professor Dr. Laszlo Sekeli. I would like to ask you, what are possibilities of detecting diseases using 11 physiological parameters?
So to give a perfect diagnosis is regularly requires a qualified medical doctor. So according to the law in Sweden, for example, you have to be a medical doctor to give a diagnosis. But if you have a possibility to measure these parameters, it can give you a relatively long list of possible diagnoses. So basically, any disease which generates a physical symptom will give you an indication that now there is a need for acute medical assessment and medical intervention. It can be anything from heart infarct, lung insufficiencies, pain in abdominal area. So basically anything which creates a complaint will also generate measurable changes in these parameters. So the great advantage of the system is not that you get a perfect diagnosis. The great advantage of the system is that it tells you that when you are in danger, when you need further assessment. And basically that is what you want to know. You don't want to have a system which sort of gives you the Latin name of your disease. You want to have a system which indicates that now it is time to seek medical attention, and also gives a clue for any level of healthcare provider how to proceed from there. Because
no, go ahead, sorry.
So it's both if it is just alleviating pain, but also if you have a life-threatening condition like gliding into shock, if you don't have a rapid intervention, then you die. So if you record an elderly patient from her home, that now her vital parameters are changing in the direction which now immediately needs that someone goes there, breaks the door, and brings her to the attention of healthcare facilities, it makes all the difference. You can think exactly the same way as people were monitoring the astronauts. You send a person into the space and you want to know, is this person okay? And if not okay, what might be the reason? This is exactly what you do now, but now you do it more parameters, and you do it with a system which can learn, which can analyze thousands and thousands of data, and actually refine its diagnostic suggestions. But you cannot expect that this machine will tell you exactly what the patient's trouble is. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also thank you. I would also have a question for Mr. Marko Höynälä, CEO and founder of Kipuwex. When Kipuwex will be officially commercialized?
This is a question that we ask or have been asked all the time. So as I explained during the presentation, my presentation, that it's a very complex device. We measure more biomarkers, and being able to comply with all the regulatory requirements. So it has taken really a lot of time to really mature the product. And now we are basically obtaining FDA. We are in the process of getting FDA. So that is basically a requirement. So as soon as this FDA is given to us, then we have to go and we can commercially launch the product, which we expect to get within a few months.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tita. Thank you, Marko. Thank you, Professor Lasko. Great presentation. And again, the importance of managing the pain and being able to check what the signs mean, and it can make a difference, and for especially for elderlies and babies as well who can't talk, and to really make the difference between life and death. So thank you so much. We're going to move to the next speaker. The next speaker is Dr. Yassine. Dr. Yassine is going to talk about pain, what is pain, how do we manage pain, and help us with the research, to explain the research that is done based on all the work that been done by the team, and give us a summary of what pain is all about. So Dr. Yassine, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Trying to share. Tell me if you can see my screen. Can you see my slides? Not yet.
Not yet, no.
Okay. It says that it's processing. Anyway, maybe waiting
Okay.
for the deck to come up. Just first to thank you all. Thank Marco for the opportunity, the invitation. It's always a pleasure to attend such conferences, especially when the ask is to talk about the crossroad between pain management and technology. My name is Yassine Adjet. I'm based out of Paris. Indeed, a pain MD by training, worked as a clinician, as a researcher in the industry and the academia around pain and CNS. Within the industry, I was a CMO or leading medical affairs for R&D in various companies in various countries, in France, Germany, UK, NIH in the US, and spent the last 5 years also in Singapore, leading innovation and pain research. Do you see now my slides?
Yeah, we can see the slides now.
Super. So that was the bridge to the presentation. And so we're going to talk about pain and pain management and some of the challenges around pain management. If you wonder on the picture that you see on my deck, some of you might probably have recognized it already, but it's from Descartes and his book L'Homme from early 17th century, who really tried to explain the pain, central integration, and the connection that you can see between the fire here, foot, and how we could feel pain. Obviously, we made tremendous progress since then, but in some aspect, we're still stuck to that high-level understanding of what is pain way deep. Talking about the definition of pain, I'm taking here the definition of the IASP. Just for the reference, IASP is the International Society for the Study of Pain. This is the new updated definition from 2020. The previous one was from 1979, so it took us over 40 years to update this definition. Again, it shows kind of a complexity that we are trying to tackle when we talk about pain management. So briefly, the definition: pain is an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience associated with actual or potential tissue damage. Sounds still a little bit blurry, I'm sure. That's why the ISP added some keynotes to the definition to try to make it more accessible and be a little bit more precise. And it highlights some key aspects that are also important for our talk. The first one is that pain is always personal, and we're going to get back to that. The fact that it's subjective, and it creates a lot of challenges when it comes, obviously, to the assessment of pain or pain treatment. And that's why we're talking about also today with Kipuwex. Pain and nociception are different phenomena. Pain cannot be inferred solely from sensory neurons. It shows, again, the complexity of pain and the biopsychosocial model, where it's not only about the stimuli that will generate pain. Sometimes we have patients and people in pain without any external stimulation. Through their life and experience, individuals learn the concept of pain, and sometimes they learn how to deal with it, and sometimes it's more deep in the physiology. And I'm sure, again, here in the audience, you know about the neurospasticity, where we can adapt, and our physiology and brain can adapt to the pain perception. Always, a person's report on pain experience should be respected. It's not for even a clinician to say, yes, no, I believe or not. If a patient says he's in pain, there is a certain sort of pain. But again, it's subjective, and it's one of the main challenges. Although pain usually serves as an adaptive role, it may have adverse effects, function, and social psychological well-being. I will get back to that. Pain is more complex than just a feeling and a sense. And the last element, extremely important, as well aligned with the topic of today: verbal description is only one several behaviors. Inability to communicate does not negate the possibility that a human or non-human might be in pain. Communication, when we talk about a subjective symptom, is an enormous challenge. And it's not because we cannot express it that a patient is not in pain. So you see how, from a still complex definition, the ISP added some of those keynotes again to clarify what we mean by pain and capture some of its inner complexities. Just very briefly, why it took more than 40 years to get to this definition. It was an open scientific and public dialogue with a lot of inputs from academia, researchers, clinicians, and patients, trying again to be as precise as possible to define something that is as universal as pain, but yet to be well understood. Why is it so complex? And it was captured in the definition of things that I've highlighted. Pain is not monofactorial. It's not only about Descartes' opening that I started with, fire, pain, central integration. It's much more complex than that. It has psychological effect, biological backgrounds, and social implications. Because as human beings, we are biosocial, psychological blend. Pain is integrated within this biopsychosocial mechanism. Briefly mention about the burden of pain. Pain is by far the biggest contributor to non-fatal burden of disease worldwide. Again, references here are the International Pain Society and WHO. The assumption is about 20% of the world population has encountered or is still suffering in a way or another from pain, mainly in a chronic condition as it's captured. The general population thinking more boldly about chronic pain. Professor Laszlo shared some of those figures, talking about cancer, it's even more. 50% of the patient at all stages. 70 to 90%, depending on the references, in more advanced stages of cancer patients are suffering from pain, and at that stage, even more at the severe kind of pain. And let's not, of course, miss the pediatric pain, which is a challenge by itself. Until the late 80s, that pain was almost denied for newborns and fetuses. The scientific belief was that until the age of 2, because of the myelinization of the nervous system, infant babies could not feel pain. And it took pioneers and fighters of science, like Professor Anand in the UK, to show with evidence that pain exists since day one, even for fetus. Again, it highlights the challenges. And I'm talking here about studies that were published here in the New England Journal, end of the 80s. So there was still debate, or can kids, infants, babies, can feel pain or not? Challenges, obviously, with my kind of intro, I mentioned some of them. This is a cloud of words. I could have added more to it. But if I need to pick one for the topic of the day, again, one of the main challenges about pain is that it's subjective. You have to rely on someone telling you what they feel without being able to measure it objectively. So the grail in the medical community about pain is to turn pain from a subjective measurement to an objective measurement. Could we one day measure pain objectively, as we measure heart rate or blood pressure? As of today, there are multiple variants of this, but we still use 0 to 10 to quantify pain and to qualify it. Are you in pain? Yes, no. 0 to 10, 7 today, 6, blah, blah, blah. And we use it in a clinical practice, we use it in research, and that's what health regulators also use as a reference to register a treatment and give a reimbursement. You need to improve by 2 points. That's all what matters. We can go on the function, we can go here and there, but still 0 to 10 since the 70s and way before. And of course, we know the limitations. It's still subjective. It's not cross-individual, and it leads to situations where, the situation is more or less under control, but yet, how many people are we missing? People that we overtreat. Sometimes we give opioids when it's not needed. Don't need to mention what's happening in the US. And people that are denied the access to treatment where they need it, either because they cannot explain their pain, they cannot rent it, they cannot put a figure behind it, so we miss it. So we overtreat, undertreat, and we miss a lot. And how do we treat patients with those challenges? We put the 0 to 10 in front of the WHO LADA. Here again, an old one, but yet it's used, it's known. If you have 10, I give you step 3. If you have a 2, I give you step 1. If you have a 5, I give you step 2. That's why I'm codifying the treatment of pain, from something that is a little bit unclear and not very accurate to 3 steps that are quite exclusive challenges. So the question is, Can we go after the grain? Can we measure pain objectively? Long-lasting question. Here again, I think Professor Laszlo showed some examples from the Apollo mission on how wearables, sensors have really tried to track some biovitals. Specifically on pain, this is only one publication, not that recent, 2018, 2019, that tried to do a systematic review on all the available data, devices, solutions that were looking at objective measurement of pain. Over 1,300 references. There is certainly a traction. There is a large amount of research to try to crack that code and see if we can measure pain objectively. And I believe in this study they've identified 15 devices. Most of them were research grade, not a consumer systems and clinical routine. So still work to be done. And we can see certainly nowadays an important acceleration. The reason, the vector, was said before by multiple speakers, technology. COVID acceleration of the adoption of that technology. Biosensors, algorithm. Technology and digital health is opening new opportunities, new potentialities to reach what we are trying to reach here, a breakthrough of changing the paradigm on how we measure pain, we treat pain. So technology can be an accelerator. And we see now a booming space. Of course, Kipuwex. There are also other devices and other companies trying to crack that code. Different modalities. I took a few examples here that you might probably know. Facial recognition. And I understand that there are a few people connected from Australia. There is an Australian company working on facial recognition for non-communicant patients. Right, check. Motion and digital treatment for chronic and low back pain. Kaya Health, for those that know it, in the US and Germany. There are other companies, other devices using EEG, using so many other modalities to try to answer this question. Can we measure pain objectively? And as Kipuwex is doing, I believe that the physio parameters, the deviation, the right algorithm, and the right digital biomarkers are the way that we should pursue. Marco asked me to share my own experience and research on that field. So, as I said, within my journey and background, being a pain MD, traveling the world, working at NIH in private, and recently in Asia, I've worked also with some startups, like the one in Asia, like one of them called Bioformis, just raised $350 million, I believe, a week ago. We try to also develop a solution for objective pain measurement, for using physical biomarkers, using a device, an app, a dashboard, and that's a work that I've shared recently at the European Pain Federation, and that's how, in a way, we got connected with Marco a few years ago. What we did was basically to use a biosensor and a device that could capture 16 bioparameters, to train them for pain measurement in 4 hours, to capture the baseline of biovitals for a patient. The ML could capture that as a baseline, no deviation, no pain. Patient confirms that he has no pain. And then we started to train on a database. We started a small exploratory study. We did the first in South Africa on knee surgery. Then we had a large study of 150 patients in Singapore for knee surgery for acute pain, and one for cancer care in Taiwan to capture the breakthrough pain. We've validated some of those assessments, and we started at that time. We went for the qualification of pain measurement, at least to train the algorithm to say pain, no pain. And the more we had data, we were trying to train the algorithm to quantify pain. So not only to say if the patient was in pain or not, but at one point to ask to say if the patient was at 6, 7, 9, or 10, objectively. Not done yet, but that's just an overview of the work that I was leading at that time. Trying to speed up, I'm cautious of time, and I can get back to that. But one of my questions was, can we measure pain objectively? I think I'm in the right audience, because the best way to always predict the future is to create it and to be an innovator. Thank you so much, and happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yassine. Great conversation. It's not always clear to us what the definition of pain and how, at what level it is critical, and, when we need the medical attention. So thanks for clarifying it. And we're really excited to see that Kipuwex is bringing the technology to make this process more accessible, but also easier for everyone. So Tita, I think you had a question. Please go ahead and ask the question to Dr. Yassine.
Thank you, Dr. Yasin Hatiat. Yes, I do have one question for you. Based on your pain research expertise, can pain assessment be digitally automated?
I think so, absolutely. I would have
Yeah.
not accepted the invitation if I was not convinced by the work that you are trying to do and other researchers. Again, for me, with the right approach, having the right technology, with the right methodology in terms of validation, yes, I strongly believe that the piece that was missing for this grail question on pain, can we measure it objectively, was technology. With technology, it can be automated. Would that take 6 months, a year, 20 years, 40 years as the change of the definition? I don't know yet, but I trust you do. But certainly, I'm confident, and I believe the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And there's another question from Marco, I think, that I see, Tita.
Yes, there is for Marco a topic how Kipuwex can quantify pain. Would you like to tell us more about it?
Yeah, actually, it's a topic for my next presentation, so I will explain
Okay,
that
all right. So,
as part of my presentation.
Okay, all right. So I missed this one out. So we're going to have a presentation from Marco. Marco is the CEO and founder of Kipuwex. So he will explain to us how Kipuwex can quantify the pain. So we had an idea of what the pain is, and the definition and the different parameters that make it challenging to measure. But now we have Marco explaining to us how Kipuwex is actually coming up with a solution to quantify the pain. So over to you, Marco.
Okay. Thank you. Let me share my screen. Can you see?
Yeah, it's coming.
Can you?
Yeah, we can see now.
Okay. So I have prepared 3 slides that how we are going to kind of quantify pain with Kipuwex. But before that, still kind of question that why pain management is important, especially for children and babies. It was partially already explained, but I would like to kind of give my view on that. So it's quite obvious that it relieves suffering, it reduces complications and promotes patient recovery, and it will make a hospital visit shorter. But it's extremely important for babies. And why is that? Simply because if the pain is not treated in a timely manner, then it can cause lifelong trauma for babies, and it can cause also disorder in development, meaning mental problems later on. And as we heard from Yasin, that around 20% of adults are suffering from the chronic pain. And many of these cases are coming from the childhood, when the baby or children was not treated properly. So pain may become chronic as well. So how we are doing objective pain measurements with Kipuwex? So actually we are combining 3 things. We combine facial analysis, cry analysis, and these 11 physiological biomarkers. And then we certainly are targeting to get the accuracy very near to 100%. And if I can say a few words about the cry analysis, some of our competitors, they have tried to actually measure pain just based on the cry, and they have managed to get the accuracy between 70 and 80%. And regarding facial analysis, also competitors have tried to do that, and it's pretty much the same, similar number or similar accuracy they have managed to get. And then also one study shows that with the right physiological parameters, it's possible to get around 90% accuracy. And now in Kipuwex, we combine all of that. So certainly we are targeting higher than 95% and hopefully closer to 100% accuracy with Kipuwex. And what we are doing at the moment is really the integration of 3 different algorithms: facial analysis, cry analysis, and then these 11 physiological measurements. And this is just highlighting that what measurements we do with Kipuwex. So posture, sound, temperature, respiratory rate, skin conductivity, ECG, SRV, movement, artery interval, heart rate, EMG, which is muscle tension. And then we have this another device which captures SpO2. So all these biomarkers we utilize when we measure the pain. Plus, of course, this facial analysis and cry analysis on top of that. So this is how we are going to do that with Kipuwex, and we are quite far already with that.
Fantastic. Any question, Tita, from on your side?
Yes, I would have one special question for Marco. What is your why, motivation for founding Kipuwex?
Excellent question. It's very personal to me, actually. My father, he actually was diagnosed of having cancer, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. And then over time, obviously, pain came into picture. And then in the end, he couldn't tolerate the pain any longer, and he committed suicide 8 years ago. So this pain topic is very personal to me, and certainly I'm going to address that. And like I said, we are quite far already.
Wow. So thank you, Marco, for the presentation and also for giving us a little bit more insight on how the Kipuwex is measuring the pain. And obviously we can't talk about all the detail of the technology here. So I'm gonna go to the question phase. I don't know if whoever is watching, if you have a question, please let us know. Put your question in the comment so that the expert and keynote speaker can address it. Just to start the process, I just wanted to ask you, and because you're using a lot of algorithm for all the markers that you for the Kipuwex. So how do you calibrate it? Because that's one thing to have those algorithm, driving the process. But how often do you go and calibrate it with the real data?
Yeah, so basically the design has been such a way that we don't need to calibrate that. So the system is kind of planned and designed such a way that it's usable for 2 years without any calibration.
Okay.
So that is basically a lifetime of the device, 2 years, and then basically we
okay.
Don't give
so that's a lifetime of 2 years
yes.
without Okay, all right. And one of the challenge, because obviously it's still a new device, and so how do you create the awareness? Not only obviously in Finland you probably now have the awareness, but how do you create the awareness globally to to get, because I think pain management is a global issue. So how do you create the awareness globally to bring this new technology to countries or region where they might need it?
I don't know if John is still in the call, and this is more question for him, but I don't know if he's there. But I will explain this. But if you, John, you haven't been still in the call, please take over. So it was okay. Yeah. So now, John, I'm sure that you want to explain our global hub setting. So we have a huge network of partners around the world. So maybe, John, you would like to explain that.
Welcome, John.
Sorry, I couldn't hear anything if you were talking to me.
Yeah, there was a question that kind of how we make people aware of our technology, and basically I was thinking that we will explain our global network, that we have partners around the world, quite a big network, which you have mainly kind of managed. So if you could say a few words about that. So did you get the question?
I think it's there's some issue with the technology. So
yeah, if I explain very quickly, so I don't know, John, can you hear us? No.
It will be better if you place the question in the chat box. So there is some technical issues.
But I can answer. If John will get back online, then he can actually take over and add some more. So basically, we have had a kind of bit different strategy. So when we actually started Kipuwex, we kind of already made a strategy that we want to go global market ASAP. So we were not planning to kind of conquer just, let's say, Finland, but we actually started to seek partners around the world. So, as our kind of priority one is really to go and help people in developing countries, we started to build network towards those countries which are classified as a development country, such as India, Africa, Pakistan, and so forth. And now, after a few years, we have managed to get a very good set of expertise within our network, which consists of around 150 partners. And when I said 150 partners, it's a combination of, let's say, hospital owners, key opinion leaders, doctors, nurses, distributors. But the common denominator for all our partners is that they all are kind of door openers for hospital settings. So as we all know, it's almost impossible to actually reach out hospitals and get them interested if you actually contact them remotely. And simply you cannot go and meet all the hospitals face to face. So we need to have representatives in different countries. And this is exactly what we have done. We have about 150 partners.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for the answer. We have a question from the public here. Compared to what is available in the current market, how would you describe the huge value that Kipuwex will bring when it will be commercially ready?
Yeah, so there are, of course, competitors. Otherwise, we would be doing something wrong if we didn't have competitors. But as we started the development already 5 years ago, and we designed the architecture such a way that we can combine all these different biomarkers into a single device. And I can say that it's not easy. Most of our competitors, they capture between 3 to 6 biomarkers. And every time when you add new biomarker or new measurement, it will increase the complexity. And it's going to be much more complicated when you try to do that. So this is definitely kind of a key difference what we have in Kipuwex, that we have more biomarkers and they all combined and work in the single device, meaning that all the biomarkers, they are timely synchronized. And also all algorithms that we have developed, we have done that in-house. So we own all the IP and this is probably the biggest difference. And many kind of devices are just wellness devices, and there's a big difference when we actually compare medical device to wellness devices. So you cannot really use wellness devices in hospital settings and in professionals. They are good references, but they cannot use for any medical purposes. And Kipuwex is a medical device.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't see any more questions, so I think that's it for the for the conference today. Unless anybody on the platform has a question, I know that Martin is here. Martin is he's been listening, and I think he's well aware of what Kipuwex is doing. So that's very good. Thanks, Martin, for being here with us. If you have a question, please let us know. Otherwise, I might actually have a question myself. So one of the question was about we've heard a lot that one of the key thing with pain and with a lot of the people that we lose is due to the isolation, especially in our aging population. So how do you address and how do you make sure, are you going to make sure that Kipuwex actually is present in all those institutions where we have aging population, or all those community where we have an aging population? And I think that's a question for Professor Laszlo, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, so I see an enormous potential for crowd supervision from this device, because as we said, that there are a lot of situations when it is a sort of life-death decision. If you can detect physiological changes which will be actually leading within a few hours to rapid deterioration of health. And I think the great advantage of Kipuwex that is already formed as a crowd supervision device. It's not as most of the competitors, they have something that it measures some parameter for your own private use. But this is an integrated system where you can go and potentially measure parameters continuously from hundreds or thousands of people. And then it also allows the people who are responsible for this population to generate a priority list, an action plan. So where do they put the resources? If you have overworked doctors and nurses, whom they will visit first. And this not only just sort of a frozen algorithm, something which the system can learn eventually. So you can train these things for those particular patient groups, a particular diagnosis group. And I think that will also be reflected in the pain detection, because when we look at the reason why people have pain, looking at different organs, I think different type of pains are manifesting different ways for different patient groups, but they have rules, they have patterns. So someone who is suffering from colitis ulcerosa pain will not have the same pattern as you have it from heart infarct or pneumonia patient. But the system can be trained up for this. So I think that the individualized pain management, and also something which is learning from the patient's own data, will provide great advantages. And this is why Kipuwex is sort of much more than just measure the ECG. You can get fantastic ECG curve, for example, with the iWatch. But it needs an active action. Actually, you have to close your loop by setting your finger on it. So a person who cannot make this movement, you cannot monitor the ECG. So I mean, there are a lot of small details in this system which sort of beat many of the competitors and opens up a lot of unexpected opportunities. So every time you put a new variable, it actually multiplies your data space. And then even tiny things what you haven't recognized before, now you will be able to, by the help of AI, actually to train up. And also because we say that we want to have a sort of common description of these and these things, but I would stress also the individualization of the data flow, and also how the system learns up from an individual patient, how these patients will react next time. So for example, if you measure pain and you have the pain scales associate with certain physiological parameter. And then when the patient get to the point that it cannot really give a verbal feedback, you learn how this particular patient reacts to his own pain. And it's the same with many of the chronic diseases. And I think this is just, we see only the beginning of this type of supervision.
Fantastic. Thank you, Professor Laszlo.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
If
Marco.
I may add something. So it was kind of in line what Laszlo said now and maybe even earlier, that getting an indication whether the health is in good shape and so forth, and getting kind of proper indication whether there is a need to go to hospital and so forth. That is really a kind of key benefit, one of the key benefits. So if I share my own ETC, wait a second. This is just one example. No. Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Okay, now I think I got it. So if some of you have been monitoring, actually the remote monitoring is no longer enabled, but if you have been monitoring my ETC whilst we've been giving the presentation, you may have actually spotted something weird happening every now and then. Like if you look here, you may have seen this kind of thing happening on my ETG. And I'm pretty sure that many of you, especially if we talk about normal home users or people who are not medical, do not have medical background, that how to interpret this ETG. Is my ETG okay? So I'm sure that most of the people cannot interpret this. That is actually the reason why to integrate this with third-party analysis software, which will actually analyze the ETG. This ETG was recorded by Kipuwex last Thursday, and this is directly from myself. So we get this kind of a report telling, kind of analyzing the ETG, that what's going on there, and looking at the key ETG parameters, and then giving the integral summary of my ETG. And as you can see, now in my case, there are some abnormalities, and the system is suggesting that I should go to hospital and get the proper ETG done. So this is kind of one of the examples that what kind of reports the end user, home users are going to get. That they don't need to interpret basically the different data, different graphs. There will be a report which will actually tell them if everything is fine and what needs to be done.
Fantastic. Very, very practical. I think that's the beauty of technology. We don't have to go anywhere. It just comes to us. There's another question. So a question from Martin, actually. Do you conceptualize the device getting smaller over time?
Excellent question. Actually, it has been smaller in the beginning. It was smaller, but then there is some things that we need to take into account. For instance, like the risk of a baby getting or swallowing the device. So we cannot actually make it that much kind of smaller, too much smaller, because then we don't meet that requirement. There's a simple requirement. If you're going to wear the device on children, there has to be certain dimensions, certain measurements. So in practice, we cannot make it much smaller, even though we potentially could do it. But that's a kind of requirement, and we need to meet that requirement. Of course, if we are going to use that only on adults, then it can be smaller. But on babies, it cannot be much smaller.
Okay, so it's a safety issue.
Yes.
Thanks for the question, Martin. I hope you got the answer that you wanted. There is a comment saying that it's a great eye opener for a lot of the viewers, and that's really what we wanted you to to get, that there's a shift. There's the technology out there that can help us to manage not only the pain but manage our health at a quite cost effective cost, because as you heard from Professor Adler at the beginning, the cost of healthcare is just skyrocketing right now. So, and all the big companies are looking for short-term, solution, which is not always, practical, and which is actually not helping, millions of people. So that it's important that we bring some practical tools, practical method that can actually help save lives, and also be accessible to everyone. And just before we leave the platform, just wanted to ask Marco and Professor Laszlo if they have a last word to the audience, or to anybody that is listening today.
Yeah, first of all, I think this has been a great conference, and kind of making people aware that what we are doing, and especially that how remote monitoring can help people and why it is so important. But at the same time, also getting more knowledge about the pain itself and how to quantify the pain objectively. And I think it has been really great that we have had these great keynote speakers here who are experts on their own field, and they're really globally known experts, so that people who are listening to this can really believe and trust what these world-known experts are saying. It's totally different than myself saying, because I'm not a medical doctor. We have such a great speakers at this event. So very much thank you also from my behalf, Laszlo and Yasin and Niklas. It has been a great.
I would like to just join in and express my optimism that this technology can provide actually a completely new level of interaction with healthcare. So as Niklas said, that you should always try to avoid to get in the hospital, but sometimes you have to. And when is that point when actually you put a lot of effort and a lot of resources to check your health and interfere with ongoing processes which can potentially kill you? For that, if you get a technological help, that's a completely new era in human medicine. So I just like to express my thank for the technological geniuses who actually come up with these methods to provide it for simple healthcare participants. That now actually the computer is on your side and it helps you. It's not just something which makes your life more complicated, but this is something which directly saves life. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe one more thing from myself. If we kind of go back 10 years or 15 years and we look at the mobile phones, they were kind of used only for making calls. And then we had a different fax machine. We had different kind of calendar reminder. We had an alarm clock at home and so forth. A lot of different equipment. And now basically all these different features, functionalities have been integrated into one single device, mobile phone basically. And that is yet to happen in medical devices, that there are a lot of different medical devices kind of serving one purpose. But then it's yet to happen that all of them, not necessarily all of them, but many will get integrated into one. And that is exactly what we have done in Kipuwex. We have integrated so many devices into one single tiny device, which is also affordable for developing countries.
Thank you so much. Any last word, Tita, for before we close out on this first conference from Kipuwex? I know there's going to be many more, but just want to hear from you if you have a last word to the audience today.
Thank you, Mirele, for this excellent conference. Thank you for all keynote speakers and all the participants. And if you want to reach out Kipuwex in the social media, just type Kipuwex. And also you can find more information from our website, kipuwex.com.
Fantastic. So you can have more information. So I've put it here, www.kipuwex.com if you want more information. Again, thank you for attending this first Kipuwex conference today. And if you, like it was stated by Tita, you can connect, not only you can connect with Tita, I think, because she's the marketing manager, the chief marketing manager, and then she'll direct you to the right person, given, your request. And as you could see, the impact, you can see the impact that Kipuwex technology will be able to make in the health sector in the world. So it's gonna be it's a revolution on the way, and in the health industry worldwide, and Kipuwex, I think, is leading now this journey, this revolution. So make sure you get more information, make sure you connect with our expert, and get to know a little bit more on what's coming up and how the technology will be disseminated in the world. So please share the learning that you got today. It's important that this learning travel in all community, because it is about making sure that there's no inequality in healthcare and help millions of people. So thank you so much for being here. And hopefully we see you next year for the second, conference on, organized by Kipuwex. And thank you to all the experts who presented today. It's been amazing, the knowledge that's been shared. And I actually learned so much myself today. And I'm going to share definitely what I've learned today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mirel. Thank you, Oris. Thank you, everyone.